I'm Stella, and I work as a pastry chef. My husband Jackson and I got married 3 years ago. His family is quite renowned, as they operate a well-known restaurant group specializing in seasonings, which I use extensively in my work. My first encounter with them was when I visited my in-laws for the first time. I must admit, I was a bit apprehensive about marrying into such an esteemed family. After all, my husband is the eldest son and is expected to take over as the family head someday. In essence, I would be marrying into a family of high stature. Maybe my anxiety was visible, but my husband reassured me with a firm grip on my hand, saying, "Don't worry, I'll always be here to protect you." But it seemed that my mother-in-law had a completely different demeanor compared to my spouse. She considered me a disgrace due to my upbringing under my father's care. In her eyes, I was an insignificant person whose family background placed me beneath her notice. She wasted no time in informing me that even if we had children, they wouldn't be in line to inherit the family business. Our initial meeting was far from pleasant, and I had a few instances of marital bullying due to my mother-in-law's hostile attitude. However, a turning point came when she selected one of my cake creations to be featured on the restaurant's menu. She took immense pride in her own baking skills, and when my cake didn't make it past the initial evaluation, she didn't hold back her criticism. She even went so far as to insinuate that I didn't put in enough effort. It was as though she believed she could outdo me, a professional pastry chef, but I could tell that losing to a seemingly ordinary woman like me must have stung. From that point on, her bullying escalated significantly. She began visiting our home more frequently, always on the lookout for something to criticize. "Stella, I noticed a hair on the floor. I'm curious about the kind of upbringing you had to be content with this level of cleanliness. I'd love to see your parents' reactions." As soon as she arrived, my mother-in-law would start scrutinizing for any imperfections and would loudly point them out. My husband, who works from home, would respond with a disapproving glare. He had taken it upon himself to manage the household chores, recognizing that I had a demanding job as a pastry chef. Despite my mother-in-law's constant attempts to belittle me, my husband stood by my side and did his best to shield me from her harsh criticisms. "Mom, look in the mirror, and you will see his parents' faces." I really wanted to tell her that. "Stella, did you force your spouse to do the housekeeping again? I can't believe you prioritize work and disregard home." I did not cut corners either at work or at home. She would change the subject and attack me. Even when my husband tried to intervene, she yelled until I apologized. I had no choice but to bend before her, and she would grin and walk away. My husband often sighed at my mother-in-law's demeanor. "I apologize. It's because I prioritized work." "No, I'm sorry. I'm not trustworthy." I considered informing her. My husband repeatedly tried to warn him, but my mother-in-law refused to listen. My mother-in-law probably listens to my father-in-law the most. Well, all I have to do is respond to my mother-in-law's sarcasm. "If you just let things go, they will go away with time." But I'll soon realize that such naive thinking will not work with my mother-in-law. I never imagined she would do that. The month was June. My husband's cousin was having his birthday celebration. A grand celebration was planned. They were planning to invite folks from work in addition to family, which surprised me. The party was scheduled to take place in a luxurious hotel hall with seating for approximately 100 guests. This is probably not a big thing in my husband's family. In addition, I have heard that his cousin is pretty gorgeous. There must be a number of males who want to get close to her on this occasion. My mother-in-law called me a few days after my husband informed me about the situation. "The family will prepare the main meal. Decide who will create what." "I see. So here is my suggestion, Stella. You're a pastry chef, so you must be able to cook. We had something delicious previously. So why don't you make that main dish? We will pay for it, so you don't have to worry about the money." Although the tone of my mother's remark appeared sarcastic, it is true that I am, on the whole, a respectable cook. Cakes are undoubtedly the best, and my mother-in-law has never reprimanded me for cooking. It is the only general about which my mother-in-law never complains. "You know how to bake, so do it properly, okay? I will forgive you if there is an error." Before I could react, my mother-in-law came to a conclusion and hung up the phone. I gave up and changed my work schedule until the day of the party, when I began preparing the cake and pastry cuisine. Everything was fine until the day of the party. My mother-in-law must have felt it was very important because she did not worry me at the time, but I now see it was only the calm before the storm. On the day of the birthday party, my mother-in-law called me. It was 10 o'clock, 30 a.m. The party begins at noon, so my mother-in-law, who is in charge of the event, must be busy finalizing the place. I wondered what she wanted, but ignoring the call would be too much effort, so I answered it. "Oh, Stella," I inspected the food. "I can't believe you are going to serve that garbage." I apologized, but I threw it all away. I couldn't figure out what was going on, so I just replied with an uninterested, "Oh, I see. Sorry, I'm at work right now." I was in the middle of hurrying to finish some essential tasks in time for the celebration. I did not have time to listen to my mother-in-law's foolishness. I said, "I tossed away all of your food. We don't have the time. We're going to start at 12. Get on and cook it over." I don't get it. Could it be that my mother-in-law is unaware that I have shifted obligations today? Yes, I delegated responsibility for everything except the cake to family members in order to respond to an urgent need. My cake was supposed to be delivered 1 hour before the event started. Thus, the cake at the location was not made by me. Of course, my mother-in-law is unaware of this. To torment me, she threw away all of the dishes and is now attempting to get me to do additional labor. A large cake cannot be created in a few hours. I believe she wanted to disgrace me in front of everyone. I had to tell her everything, because if I didn't, it would cause havoc among my husband's relatives. Mother, please pay close attention to what I say. I'm currently in the kitchen. I've been here since the morning. I've been making the dessert to fulfill an urgent order. That is why I am not in charge of the major courses. The main cake was to be presented later. I sat slowly and gently, like if I were speaking to a child. "You are not telling the truth. How can this be?" When my mother-in-law realized what was going on, she panicked. "What will you do? We don't have much time left until we begin. You must do something. It is your fault for not telling me. Otherwise, I will assume you tossed it away." My mother-in-law is saying some odd stuff, but it would jeopardize my image as a pastry chef if she revealed that I threw the stuff away. I had no choice but to delegate important tasks to my workers and rush to the location. However, there was a traffic block, and I arrived at the site around 11 p.m. I had contacted my husband and explained the scenario to him, so when he saw me, he rushed up to me with a pale expression. Apparently, the food was not delivered on time. The food was in the waiting area, but the main dish was missing. So I went into the kitchen, and there was a sink full of food. Then I walked inside. It resembled a funeral. Some people even claimed they had no choice but to cancel the birthday party. Stella threw it away, according to my mother-in-law, in dire straits. Of course she did. When she spotted me, she treated me like a criminal. I saw this coming and made a plea to my husband. "I'm sick of dealing with my mother-in-law. I'm going to end all of this today." "Stella, what exactly have you done? You're such a bad guy for interrupting someone's joy," she screamed at me. My husband's relatives had heard the disturbance and turned on me all at once. I believed what she said, but I did not throw away the food. My mother-in-law was quick to respond. "Who else but you? How dare you destroy this celebration? I can only imagine you growing up with a single parent. I spent the morning at work. I am sure our employees can vouch for this. And you, mother, were the one who told me you had thrown away all the food, wasn't it?" Would never say something like that. That's why, as single-parent children, I question what type of education we received to blame others. My mother-in-law was a tragic heroine who convinced everyone around her that she was the victim. The relatives trusted my mother-in-law, who had been in the family for over 20 years, more than I, who had only been a member for a few years. I could feel the report becoming more focused on me. So I guess we should look into the security cameras in my store. I am confident that I can prove my alibi. Then it'd be obvious that my mother-in-law was lying. I was determined to fight back, but I begged Moody to do my job. I proceeded directly to Stella's workplace. It was my father-in-law's voice. I asked my husband to contact my father-in-law. He was a busy guy, so there was a strong chance he would refuse, but my father-in-law appeared to agree. My husband is relieved that he accomplished his task. Because of my father-in-law's statements, the mistrust that had been focused on me began to shift to my mother-in-law. "So Stella, I'd like to hear more of what you mentioned regarding the phone call earlier." She sampled the food and threw it away because she thought it tasted like rubbish. She told me to do it over. Then I began playing the audio I had secretly taped. "Now how about this? Do you continue to believe in her?" When I posed this inquiry, my relatives began to apologize to me. Then I heard someone call out from among them. It was Sarah, my cousin. In fact, Sarah was the one who took over cooking for me so that I could deal with the requests that came on such short notice. She kindly volunteered to cook for me because I appeared to be busy. Sarah and I have always been close friends. I had taught her how to cook, so I trusted her with the food. I never expected this to happen. I can't believe she tossed out the meal I worked so hard for. And that was only to place the blame on Stella? It's dreadful. She blamed my mother-in-law while crying. Sarah was the life of the party, but she wanted to surprise everyone with her cuisine, so I agreed to help. Was Sarah's dish so bad? When asked to try it, I thought it was fantastic. No, I didn't intend it that way. Don't make any excuses, you moron. Oh, my father-in-law roared at her and she sank to the floor. My mother-in-law apologized to my father-in-law repeatedly, but he refused to listen. Moreover, my mother-in-law has other people to apologize to. Mother, I think you should apologize to someone else. Even if Sarah's food was that horrible, it's a shame to throw it away. My mother-in-law became irritated and scowled at me when I said that. She was foolish not to realize that rebellion is useless. I threw it away, thinking it was your food. I despised the sight of a single-parent woman like you preparing meals, finding it repugnant and unattractive. It would be a disgrace to offer such food to everyone. Therefore, I respectfully discard it. You should be thankful. My mother-in-law spat and screamed at me. My husband's aunt increased her voice, surprised by what she had said. Layla, being a single parent is horrible. You are aware that I am divorced. Did you forget that the father was a single parent? My mother-in-law was startled by the chilly look in her eyes, as if she were reading a book. Before she knew it, her relatives were staring at her in the same manner. Oh no, you are a top-tier single parent. Stella is descended from a low-ranking single parent. That is why she is so disgusting. Single parents appear to have various ranks similar to cows. That was news to me. Please stop chatting. My father-in-law yelled something. My mother-in-law shuddered as she sat on the cold kitchen floor. I heard it was a celebration, but what exactly is going on? A voice rang out, and I turned to see a stately old guy. He is my husband's granddad and the present head of the household. I have no idea what is happening, but her act of discarding the food is beyond forgiveness. The current family head fixed his gaze upon my mother-in-law, his disapproval evident. It was considered beneath a person to waste food. I had been taught as a child to always show respect for food. Every dish contained a pinch of salt, just as every grain of rice did. This respect extended not only to the food itself, but also to the person who had prepared it. In essence, when you wasted food, you were discarding a part of their soul. The family head questioned my father-in-law, "Is there anyone else in our family who would display such ingratitude?" My father-in-law promptly responded, "Of course not. We have no place for such ungratefulness in our household. I'll file for a divorce tomorrow." The family patriarch chuckled with satisfaction at my father-in-law's response. In our family, the head held absolute authority, and everyone present understood the weight of those words. My mother-in-law, who had been eager to assume the role of the next family head, understood better than anyone else that the family leader's decision was final, regardless of her protests. She went around apologizing to all the relatives for disrupting the celebration and wasting the meal, especially since our family ran a restaurant. It turned out that some of her own relatives had also been victims of her sarcasm, and they accused her of abuse. Ultimately, in terms of property division, they agreed to provide her with a small sum of money. She was expelled from the house and had to live in a dilapidated apartment. Now she works part-time, often under the supervision of a younger employer who frequently reprimands her. With my mother-in-law's negativity no longer weighing us down, my own work began to flourish. Several of my cake creations even made it onto the menu at my father-in-law's restaurant. "I gained weight from eating too many of your cakes," my father-in-law would often jest, patting his ample belly with a chuckle. A few months later, my belly had grown, not from indulging in cakes, but because I was expecting a child. I was determined to preserve this newfound happiness for both my future child and my husband. With this dedication, I continued to bake cakes, aiming to bring smiles to the faces of my customers.